You'll be getting, I was going to say, this will be recorded, and you'll be getting a message for CLE after the session. We wanted to do a session that has both practical aspects on your life personally as well as in your work, because artificial intelligence, love it or hate it, is here to stay. Last year and beginning of this year, almost 80% of companies were exploring or actively using AI in business. AI is deeply embedded in our daily lives with wearable fitness devices, digital maps, Siri voice assisted technology, chat box, shopping lists, Chat GPT, generative AI is used actively in drafting emails, summarizing documents. And my firm, Blank Rome, who is sponsoring this session, is using and exploring almost 6 different kinds of AI programs by specialty, such as, corporate and litigation. So we thought it would be helpful to do a program to share our firm's collective knowledge of what works and what doesn't in generative AI and get your ideas on challenges and opportunities that you see. This will not be a typical legal seminar. It has an operational focus, and we have assembled a great panel, including our own board member for ACC San Diego, Mary Hardy, thank you, focused on the practical applications of AI. Let me introduce myself, and then the panel will introduce themselves. So I'm Sharon Klein. I'm a partner at the law firm of Blank Rome. I sit here in Irvine, California, a little above San Diego. I co-lead the privacy, security, data protection, and artificial intelligence groups for the firm. I advise businesses on assessing and mitigating risks related to the privacy and security of personal data, drafting and implementing privacy, security, and data protection policies and best practices, compliance with global, federal, and state privacy and security laws, regulations, and rules, data governance, breach response, crisis management, and remedies for non-compliance. Basically anything in data or tech. I'm certified as an information privacy professional by the International Association of Privacy Professionals. With that, Mary, if you'd like to give a quick introduction and then turn it over to the other panelists. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for joining us on your lunch break today. I'm Mary Hardy. I'm in the IP department at Microsoft. I specialize in open source and AI. And I'm joined by Ashton. Do you want to go next?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashton Batchelor. I'm the Chief Innovation and Value Officer from Blank Rome. And what I am bringing to the conversation today is our experience in evaluating, vetting, and building adoption for artificial intelligence, especially in the practice of law.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Shin. I'm an associate in the Privacy, Security, and Data Protection Group at Blank Rome's Irvine office. I work alongside Sharon. And as Sharon noted, I primarily assist clients on a diverse range of privacy and information security matters, including compliance with all of the various state privacy laws that are popping up and the AI laws more recently. That also entails developing and implementing various privacy policies, internal and external, and negotiating different types of tech-related agreements, including with AI vendors. And it's an honor and pleasure to be able to speak with you today.
Well, thanks, everyone. So let's get started. The topics we will explore today include how to benefit from the use of AI in everyday tasks and to get more out of AI in your workplace, both current and future uses of artificial intelligence. As Karen indicated, we'll talk about policies and procedures and best practices to help guide users to mitigate risk, and some real practical tips and personal tips on how to use artificial intelligence. And because artificial intelligence is all about being efficient, we are leveraging a video of a prior AI seminar that we provided to help with an overview. But we will still be here if you have questions, and half of the program will be devoted to a live update with current advances in artificial intelligence, some advice on mitigation of risk in using artificial intelligence, and there are some really cool technologies that can help with that today, and also here to answer any of your questions. But let's get to it. At the heart of this seminar is, given everything else that we have going on in life, at work, family, personal life, community service, is AI worth the investment of time, the thing that is precious that we don't have, to learn and to use it? So let's start with Karen. Let's hear what our panelists have to say about their use of AI. As Karen mentioned, she's an associate focused on compliance and corporate transactions, currently using AI, and she'll talk about how helpful it has been in her practice, really.
As an associate of a law firm, I've been finding AI the most useful for just being a starting point for research and helping summarize really large documents. If there's a novel research question, I use CoCounsel or Westlaw's AI tool to really help that research process. These tools have been helpful as they seem to provide cites to the relevant statutes or cases. And if there's a long statute or enforcement action that it will take like probably 3 hours for me to get through, I've used Harvey, for instance, to help summarize those documents and really point me to the most important parts. And, as an associate, it's, really on me to start drafting articles to, send out client alerts and whatnot. So using Harvey to really help in that process has been so time efficient for me, especially for those non-billable work. And I know that folks at our firm have also been using AI to help take a first pass in creating template agreements or even identifying some of the mandatory clauses for, different types of contracts. So I know that AI has been used, across our firm, based on our specific practice area. But I will say that the caveat here is that none of these AI tools are perfect. And I know that I have to actually always go back and fact check their output. So actually making sure I'm looking at the statutes and the cases that the tools are citing to, or actually looking at some of the other articles maybe that are out there and secondary sources that help summarize the statutes or enforcement actions I'm looking at. I've also noticed that the way I craft my prompts really lead to different results. So while these AI tools help me to use my time more efficiently, I have realized that it still does take some time for me to iterate on the prompt to be able to get the result I actually need.
And I think we'll cover that a little bit later with our experts. And that was a great summary of a work example. But Mary, do you have some personal examples of how artificial intelligence can really help in our day-to-day lives as we're multitasking?
Sure. I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of my whole company, but I thought I could share with you some of my personal uses. And I know you didn't want to talk about work stuff, but I had this great experience the other day. If you have a contracts database and you work a large company, sometimes you have more than one agreement with another company. And I needed to find a certain agreement that talked about a certain technology. And so I was able to ask, our tool is called Copilot. And I asked, do we have agreements with this company? And it came up with some number of them. And instead of having to search or skim each one of these for the information I needed, I said, can you tell me which ones of these apply to a certain technology? And then that narrowed the scope, right? And then I was able to say, can you compare and contrast those terms so I could figure out quickly which contract I needed. It was so great. Anyway, I love that one. But in my personal life, so last January at the Super Bowl, we launched Copilot. It's a free app for mobile devices. You can also access Copilot through Bing Search. It's free there too, in case you want to try it. But so I tried the phone app out and I found that it's so great. It's like having a research assistant. for my personal life. So for example, I needed to change the battery in my motorcycle because it was about 3 years old and it wasn't starting. So I asked it, what kind of battery do I need for my motorcycle of this particular type? And it came back with, oh, this is absorbent glass mat battery. Here's 4 different brands that are suitable for your make and model. I was like, great. Where can I buy these? And it came back with, here's some online stores. Here's some stores near you. Here's some prices, but please double check the prices. I was like, that's so cool. How do I change my battery? And then it gave me a list of steps. Now, I always recommend that you, like Karen noted, you double check the information, especially when you're dealing with electricity or law. And then lastly, I said, is there a YouTube video for this? And it's like, why, yes, there's actually 3 YouTube videos. Here they are. And here's some information about them. And you can click on these links. So those are the steps I would have researched on my own. It would have taken me so much longer. This probably took, less than 2 minutes. And it's getting better all the time, which I think we'll get to later. So you can you learn how to use it better with your better prompts, and then it's improving on the back end. And it makes it great for some time savings.
Those are great examples. And I think that sort of reiterates the point, which I'm reminding myself, is you have to start somewhere. And really that improves over time, not only with the artificial intelligence, but with your use of it. But we really can't harness the benefits of using artificial intelligence without an understanding of how it works, what it can do, and importantly, what it really can't do. Am I selecting the right tool for the job? Is it grounded in the right data so I can get closer to the right answer? And Ashton, I know that you really have a lot of expertise in the operational side. And what are several things that we should all know that you'd be willing to share with us about artificial intelligence that can improve our use of it and a better understanding of how it works?
Of course. So I think a couple of things here, and then we'll go into 5 ways that you can really utilize this information to your benefit. It really starts with tool selection. So that's key. Am I selecting the right tool for the job? What is that tool grounded in? What knowledge does that tool have? And then how is it trained? So that's one of the most important things to think of even before you start crafting that prompt. So in Mary's example, I need a battery for my motorcycle. We have multiple AI tools at our disposal. For most of us, we have legal specific tools. We have tools that we use that are a little bit more creative. And then we have tools that we would use personally. So if Mary were to ask that same question to a legal specific tool, where can I find a battery for my motorcycle? She's probably not going to get the outcome that she wants. So really the tool selection and then remembering what a tool is grounded in. If it's grounded in the internet and you need to research a case, you're also probably not going to get the right result there. So I think that's key. I can go into a couple of things that we wanted to share with you in terms of how we can get the most out of artificial intelligence. And there are a few ways that we think, no matter where you are in your AI journey, there's more that AI can be doing for us. So I'll share a couple of these examples, especially as AI becomes more ubiquitous in our professional and personal lives. So what we're trying to do when we're working with our firm members is to determine how to best utilize AI applications and then help them figure out what's the best tool, how do I use it effectively, and then how do I create effective prompts. So the first one that we'll talk about, we were just chatting about this a few minutes ago, is, the one thing that none of us have right now is time. And so one of the ways that we can really utilize AI is to help give us the gift of that time. So enter our inbox or all of the communications that we need to manage. Now, we may be getting time back from artificial intelligence in 2 and 3 minute increments, but when we think of all the ways that we're connected, these small blocks of time really have a multiplier effect for us. And there are many tools on the market that promise to make our inbox or communications more efficient. We're going to talk about Copilot for Microsoft 365. So this is Copilot for the Microsoft Suite. We'll talk about how we use it in Outlook. So it can really help us in a few ways. The first is really summarizing detailed emails because it's going to read faster and help us come up to speed more quickly on email chains that some of which have already lived a full life before we've been added. It's also great at finding mentions of deadlines and urgency. Copilot will also help you draft emails, and that helps you shift from that writer to an editor. By prompting, you can give it a few prompts, you have a draft of an email. And we've all asked a colleague to quickly review an email that you're about to send. The nice thing about AI is it always has capacity for you. So with Copilot's coaching function, it will review your email. It's going to give you those tips and will offer a helpful tone check. So Mary, you had some great ideas too about how you're utilizing Copilot in Teams and using that to kind of cut through the noise. What are you doing at Microsoft?
I was just chuckling about your tone example. It's like, does it ever say like, be nicer?
Yes.
It would be so mean. Try again. So I'm not in sales, but I have the most experience with these tools. So I was going to talk about my favorite application is in Teams, because if you allow it to, it will listen to the people in the meeting and it can summarize for you, comes up with action items, who said what. And one thing that I really loved about it was I was on a call with some clients and I had to be very reinforce some caution for something that they were doing. And it really picked up on that. It was like, Mary is very concerned about this thing. I was like, thank you for emphasizing that and noticing that I was like, hey, make sure you're listening to me. This is important. So I love the meeting recaps and the notes that you can have afterwards.
A great idea. All right, so the next one, the next way that you can really get more from AI is to use it for brainstorming or idea generation. AI is so capable of taking on personas, and when we're pairing that with context, it can help us overcome things like a blank page problem, or it can help us accelerate the progress that we have already made by providing us fresh ideas or alternatives based upon the work that we're doing. And I just want to stress, AI isn't going to get us to that final finished product, but it is going to help us get started faster or potentially enhance our work. You know, just have a personal story on this. I use this for brainstorming and was a hero at home. My son wanted to bake cookies, so I used AI to create a cookie recipe based upon what we had in the house, and it wasn't much. So we were able to do that and, you know, utilize that. And in doing that, I didn't need to spend so much time trying to sift through what would work. So when we think about this, it really comes down to tool selection. Many AI tools are capable of brainstorming and ideation. Key here is going to be to select the right tool and make sure it's grounded in the right knowledge, so you are getting good output from the tool. All right, the next is to get to the important things quickly. And AI can really help us synthesize information and process that quickly. And that will help us to find information that we're looking for, summarize and extract information, allowing us to repurpose our time. So it's going to save time and then allow me to focus on higher and better work. AI is so good at this because it has an ability to rapidly process information. So it's going to cut through the noise of long documents, agreements, contracts. It can provide helpful summaries in varying degrees of detail, and it's going to do that faster than a human could read. So this is going to be the ace up your sleeve for those last-minute fire drills or complicated tasks. And while AI does well at saving us time, it can also help enhance our work and bring even greater accuracy. And it can do this because it consistently applies criteria, and it will apply that criteria over and over again across a document. So if I ask AI to find a change of control provision within a contract, it's going to read that document and will use context clues to help find things that I might have missed than if I were just doing a control find or trying to search for that information myself. And the last is customization. I love this for busy people. AI has the ability to produce the summaries in different formats, tables, bullet points, chapters, you name it. And if you provide something to someone and they say, oh, it would be great if we could have it in this format, that's a really nice way to take that information, and instead of spending that time or having someone else spend that time to restructure everything, you can delegate that work to AI. One of the other ways that we're utilizing AI is to add polish to everyday tasks. So this is enhancing our work or providing a skill that we may not have. I am not a graphic artist, but I do a lot of training. I do a lot of presentations and create PowerPoint materials. So utilizing AI to help us design images, logos, content, and presentation ready materials. This is something that is going to take the content that we've created, it's going to add that polish and have us ready to go in much less time. So the tools that we've really liked for this are Copilot for Microsoft 365 and then Canva Magic Design. It's going to take that information, ask you some background on it, and then create an output for you. And then the last tip, the last way that you can really get more out of AI that I wanted to share with all of you is AI is great at explaining and teaching. And this can be applicable whether you're doing something at work or you're doing something at home. It can help us learn. And it can do that by pulling vast information to try to find the most relevant pieces of information for us. So think about Mary's example again with Copilot. It found the relevant information that she was looking for, brought that to her much more quickly. And so use tools like Copilot. Perplexity is great for more scholarly articles, pulling peer research articles, and then legal tools. We would obviously be looking at tools that are grounded in that legal specific knowledge. This is also great for those of you that might be doing help with homework. So I learned math in a different way than my daughter learned math, and I don't speak French, and my son goes to a bilingual school. AI is great. You can upload an image of the homework and ask for help explaining something to your student.
Well, thank you very much for all of that. That was really, really helpful, and it's always good to hear. I love the homework example, by the way. What I heard was that AI output could only be as good as what you ask it. And frankly, what's held me back a lot are the prompting, because, I am pretty impatient, and if they don't like to iterate back and forth to try to get the answer. So I was wondering, Ashton, if you have any detailed advice on how to be more efficient in the use of prompting. What does it look like to have a good prompt versus one that's not as efficient?
Sure. Thanks so much, Sharon. So prompting is something that, as we've trained and worked with many of our firm members, attorneys, to adopt AI, this is the most common theme that we hear, which is, I have all these great ideas, but how do I structure that in a way where I'm going to get a great output, where I'm going to, really see the results that everyone's talking about in terms of artificial intelligence. And there's some good news that we're going to share with those of you who are still trying to work through how to perfect a prompt. We'll share that in just a minute, but I wanted to talk through a simple framework that we use to help structure good prompts up front, so you get better results. You get that better first draft or first result from an AI application. So let's start with looking at a less effective prompt, and I'm going to use an example. We all hear these examples. They fill our inboxes with, someone who has utilized an AI application in a way that it's not designed to be used, and they don't get a good output. And in this example, we'll look at that in terms of case law. So the prompt going into an AI application: find me case law about employers' obligations to provide rest and meal breaks to employees. Okay, fairly short prompt there. And then we're putting that prompt in. I know that nobody would actually do this, but let's use this for our example here. We're putting it in an application that is not grounded in legal knowledge. So take your pick of free freely accessible AI applications that aren't grounded in case law. Let's say we'll put this prompt into one of those applications, and let's see what we get. So the results that we get from this are probably not what we're looking for, but an AI application is designed to be helpful. So it will speak with confidence. It might provide me specific citations to cases that look real. And if I take that information and I don't validate it, I may be providing or relying on information based upon cases that don't exist. So what went wrong here? Well, to start, we selected the wrong tool. So if you utilize an AI application, we were just talking about right tool for the right job. If you're looking for primary source information, if you're looking for information related to legal contracts, you should be using an application that is designed and grounded in that knowledge and specifically trained for those purposes. And there are a number of those applications that are on the market. So we would be selecting that right tool up front, and then we would be putting in a prompt that wasn't quite so generic. So I gave a very generic prompt, and I may get cases from a number of jurisdictions that don't apply to the area that I need to find case law in. I also could find outdated results. So some of the applications have a cutoff date where they don't continue to refresh that information. So that's something that you always want to be aware of and check within your organization if there is a cutoff period. And then lastly, there's no citator to check to see if that case is still good law. An AI application that is designed for legal will have this, and it will actually take you to that authority. So now let's look at what an effective prompt looks like. So as you can see here, I'm using the same type of prompt. We're still looking for that case law related to rest and meal breaks, but it's much longer. So I'm specifying, now I'm looking for this information under California law, and I'm telling the AI application specifically what I want from it. I want a memo. I want it to summarize the case law and then highlight the cases that found for the employers versus the employees. The other major adjustment that we're making here to make this an effective output is we're using an AI application that's grounded in primary authority, and there are a number of those applications. We've listed a few of them here. Now, we're going to get better results from this because we've provided specific context in our prompt and instruction. We are going to get a better first set of results. We may still need to do some iteration and follow-up, but we have a first pass at that research that is going to be more related to what we're seeking. And we know that if we are using a database that is constantly refreshed and up to date, we're going to get those up-to-date results. And I am going to be able to quickly go in and verify that those cases are valid. I will be able to check those citations to confirm that those cases are appropriate for my specific task. So those are, two same type of prompt. We're looking for the same information and an example of two very different outcomes that can occur. So how do we address this and simplify it? So when we're looking at creating prompts and writing prompts, there are really four things that we want to be thinking about. And the first, and we can't underscore this enough, probably the most important thing that you can start with to positioning yourself to have a good outcome when using AI is selecting the right application. So I am not going to use Westlaw or CoCounsel, which is Thomson Reuters application, to replace a motorcycle battery, but I would use that for case law and vice versa. I'm not going to ask Westlaw to do financial analysis. I would potentially do that with Copilot. So making sure you're selecting the right application is key. And then from there are three things to remember. The first is intent. So we want to, when we're prompting, outline immediately what our goal is. I'm searching for case law. So that's the intent. That's what we're trying to find. The next is context. So we're providing background that will help the AI application understand. So I'm looking for case law in California. And then I am providing details about the types of cases that I'm seeking related to rest and meal breaks. So I've taken that and I've provided my intent, my context, and then I'm providing the instruction or the desired output that I want to see. Just like if you were delegating to one of your colleagues, you would say, I want a research memo, or I would like bullet points. When we delegate to AI, we're using that same type of theory. So please give me a memo summarizing the case law and then provide the citations. And the nice thing is that most AI applications will have the ability to customize. So if you want a longer research memo, you can specify, I would like something that's comprehensive, versus if you like to look at information in bullet points and then dig deeper, you would instruct it to do that same thing. So what task should the AI application perform, and then in what format? So that's one of the ways that we are simplifying how we are writing prompts. But the good news is AI applications are also advancing and are taking some of that work out of the process for us. So we're seeing more interactive chats. If I put a prompt in, an AI application may say, here's what I understand you would like me to do. Can you please confirm? Or it may say, did you mean this? So it's interacting with us in a much more organic way than us simply putting a prompt in and then seeing that application generate a response for us.
And Ashton, I've also noticed that, at least in the papers, I haven't experienced it myself, that there's a new big thing called agentic AI, which actually learns from patterns and real-time data, acting on its own without human prompting or minimal human prompting at all. And I don't know, Mary and Ashton, if you can sort of describe what this new big thing is and why is it good for us?
Yeah, do you want me to take that?
Sure, please.
Yeah, it's the hot new thing. And it's thanks to recent developments in reasoning and memory. So now we're getting what we're calling AI agents. I describe them similar to the way you did, Sharon, that they're designed to operate with a high degree of autonomy and with minimal human input. Some of them are able to learn as they exist. And it can be, so you would empower it to take certain actions or integrate with web services or even other agents. And it can make decisions based on context, adapts to changes, and it can anticipate and answer follow-up questions. In legal work streams, this might look like proactively flagging legal risks in documents or negotiations. So could suggest contract clauses or perform compliance reviews without waiting for user inputs. I just used it this morning to write an executive summary about a project, and it include status, current status, so it looked through all of my emails and documents and slide decks and Teams messages, and it analyzed all of the information and came up with and wrote an executive summary. I was actually kind of shocked at how good it was. I was like, wow, that made my life a lot easier because I could have spent all day on that thing. And of course, I'll go back and recheck everything. But at my first glance, it looks like it did a really good job. It's correct. So that's a product that just launched generally to the public on the 2nd of June. It's called Researcher, Copilot Agent Researcher. There's another one called Copilot Agent Analyst, and that you can feed it a bunch of data and just ask it, what do you see? Of course, you're going to want your prompt to be specific, but can you tell me what trends you're seeing in the data? And sometimes it can see things that humans don't immediately pick up on. And so it's great for high volume tasks, especially so if you have someone that has to look at let's say customer inputs over and over and over the same thing, and there only occasionally are different actions that you take, that can really wear down your paralegal. But the AI doesn't get tired, so that's another nice perk about this. So can we go to the next slide?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the difference between, agentic and generative, and so maybe this helps as well.
Oh, sorry. Yes, that's right. So in my opinion, it doesn't require as much prompting skill as to get the output that you need as the generative AI does, but and prompts are still important because we're still going to be using Gen AI for now. But it's because you've sort of pre-primed it and pre-trained it to know what its task is. You know, like the researcher one is like, I know that I'm a researcher and you're going to ask me for a certain style of things. Versus the analyst is like, I'm going to be looking at large amounts of data and looking for trends.
That's really exciting. And so you're going to go or Ashton through an example then?
So we'd
Show
like to
us
show
what
you.
this looks like. And
We'd
I
like
love having minions, so yeah.
We'd like to show you what this looks like. And this is an example of one of Copilot's AI agents. And this is the AI agent for Analyze. And the reason why we chose this example is one of the things that we hear or have heard in the past is, you know, I need to analyze this data, or my clients provided this information, I need to quickly analyze it. And sometimes you don't have the time, or in order to conduct some of the analysis, you know, we're not all statisticians, right? So it allows us to bend that learning curve while still remaining engaged in the steps that the AI application are taking. And what I really like about this is, you know, I have a financial background, so I want to see the steps that it's taking, and it shows me the steps. It'll even show me the code, which we'll look at in just a minute. But what I started with is just basic information that I had in an Excel spreadsheet. We used public information for this, and it was population data. And I put that spreadsheet into my Copilot agent, into Analyze. And as soon as I uploaded it, it started checking the information. So no prompt required. It's starting to look at the information for me. And it's getting its arms around what data is available, the structure of that data, and getting ready to provide some analysis. And then we simply asked it for insights. So it's going to give you a number of options to choose from, or you can prompt it. And we just started with, you know, I want to see what it's capable of showing me. And it showed me all of this information. So you can see as it's working and what it was doing. It's going to create a table. It's summarizing population data. It's accessing data, and it's summarizing that information. So all of this information it's doing with minimal prompting from me, but it's showing me each step so that if I have a question about, you know, what is this result coming from, or what information is it taking, what's that source information, I have that available to me. And then what I liked is it actually showed me the code as it was working. When it was finished, it gave me the option for, would I like to see, you know, summarization? It gave me a nice executive summary, and it also gave me visualizations. I asked it to create some visualizations, so I gave it some prompting based upon some of the findings, and then it created these different visualizations and charts for me. And this process, when we were running this test, it took about 15 minutes to work through this, from having the information to having an output that we could actually put in slides. So it was a very quick turnaround, which was nice, especially if you're running into a meeting, you need to provide an update of some sort. So this is a really cool thing that we're seeing coming out of Copilot. And the nice thing is it can be customized to the data that you have in order to really make sure that you're getting what you need.
That's amazing. I know that if that took 15 minutes, I could never do that myself, especially the visuals. And what's nice about that is, you know, adults learn in different ways. So, you know, we like words, you know, so actually summaries are fine with us, but some of our clients like the pie chart, which is really useful, or some of the graphing. And you know, that'd be really an interesting adjunct to be able to provide that along with our legal advice. So thank you. Ashton, Mary, do you have anything else on agentic or generative before we move on to best practices?
This might be a good time to interject and to say, if you're experiencing AI fatigue, I totally understand. I'm not allowed to feel that way, but if it's happening to you, it's like, I get it. I would encourage you just to keep trying and don't give up. And notice how many times we mentioned in the talk, make sure you're using the right tool. So for example, if you tried ChatGPT a few months ago and it gave you a terrible answer, that's a language model. It's a very good language model, but that's all it is. A product like Copilot, I'm not in sales, it's just the one I know the best, that has implemented over 100 models that are working together, one hopes, to answer your inquiries. So don't give up and keep trying and try to make sure you use the right tool for your task and see if that's any better.
No, that's
I would
great advice.
add to that.
And it's good because don't give up is important when we're just learning these tools. And the tools are advancing at such a rapid rate too, that
Yeah.
it's really good to know that, they sort of recognize the prompting engineering issue and helped us humans be able to get more and better information out of the AI tool itself. So that's encouraging as well.
And I
Alright,
would
so I
just
thought
say,
we would,
don't get discouraged. So continue to play around with applications, look at new releases as they're coming out. It's really worth that learning time.
excellent. So we thought we'd talk about some best practices. We heard that the AI model has to be trained on massive data sets. Obviously, you get good output from good input and the reverse. So a bad output from bad input. And so I think we've been reading about, and there's some litigation about some of the privacy and IP issues because of those massive data sets. I wondered, Karen, if you could sort of take us through how you can avoid those privacy and confidentiality risks in using artificial intelligence.
Yeah, sure thing. So we have up on the screen some best practices for the use of AI, and I'll just go ahead and run through those points quickly. The first is, you should really understand how your company uses AI. What purposes is the use of AI trying to achieve? Are those purposes within the scope of use authorized by the company? As an example, for us as a law firm, before we use an AI tool, we do have a policy that mandates us to review any specific client policies regarding the use of AI. And we have to make sure that whatever we're using the AI tool for is within the parameters of our client's guidelines. The second thing really deals with the right inputs. You have to be careful of putting in any confidential, sensitive, personal, or proprietary information, any, company IP into the AI. That's very problematic. On the privacy front, you're generally responsible for providing any notices or consents that are required to process personal information and making sure that you have all licenses necessary for any data that you're putting into the AI tools. Inputting personal information of others without, appropriate consents might constitute a data breach. And this is an example that we actually had a client have, which was somebody from HR had put in an Excel spreadsheet of all of the employees' personal information, like social security numbers, into ChatGPT to help, I think, analyze some salary information. And so that was a huge issue because, that can constitute a data breach requiring notice under the various state data breach notification laws. Another point on data security is that input and output data can, in some instances, be stored on the AI tool provider's cloud. So if there is a breach of that AI tool provider systems, that can also result in a breach of your data. While
Those
you
are-
may, oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
sure.
Karen.
Yeah, so another point is that, while you may own the input and the output of the AI tools, some of the tools can use your content or data to train their AI models, which can result in a loss of control over such data, including any IP rights that are attached to that data. Your data used to train those AI models can be used by the AI tools to provide outputs for others. And this is especially true for the free publicly available AI tools. So that's just also something to keep in mind. On top of that, in a lot of the agreements that we see with AI vendors, they do reserve the right to de-identify, aggregate, or anonymize data that is being input into the AI tools. And that is generally owned by the tool provider and can be used for their own purposes.
So those are good pointers in terms of when you're selecting. I know we heard, the right tool for the right job. When you're selecting an AI vendor, to ask those questions about what are they using to train the tool, and if you have that slip up in terms of the social security numbers, is it possible to somehow mitigate against that and understand what it's grounded in, and what, if any, issues has the AI vendor seen in terms of the operational effects of the AI. So that's really helpful on input, but what about output? So we know that all those companies that are using artificial intelligence need humans to review outputs to avoid bias and quality issues. Can you give us some practical tips about how we can mitigate risk in outputs?
Sure. So as we mentioned before, AI tools are not perfect. While AI tools like OpenAI, ChatGPT, Copilot can be great for learning how to prompt and, be helpful in terms of using your time more efficiently, the output will most definitely need to be validated and human oversight is required. As Ashton had mentioned before, those free AI tools can be prone to hallucinations and biases because it's generally based off of data from the internet. And so just to make sure that you are actually doing the work in terms of validating whatever output is being generated by the AI tools is extremely important. The second thing is to be transparent in the process on results. So if you are using AI to create work product, you need to let the folks know that are receiving that work product that AI was used to create it, and don't overstate the accuracy of the AI. That's something that we've seen come up in recent FTC enforcement actions as well, about not overstating what the AI tool is doing. And then also, continue to use human intelligence. AI tools generally disclaim liability for the output of the tools, so the onus is on you legally to validate the output and use it appropriately, as we mentioned. Going back to, the relationship with AI vendors and contracts, you should really understand how the AI vendors are using the input and output data and what data security safeguards they have in place to protect the data that you're inputting in. You should also be reviewing what's in the agreements with those AI vendors. Some of the AI tool vendors have codes of conduct which govern, acceptable use of the AI tool. And if violated, the tool might be suspended or restricted. And these codes of conducts we've noticed are generally hyperlinked and subject to change without notice. So that's something that comes up often when we negotiate with AI vendors, as well as how do we make sure that we understand what is allowed and permitted by using the AI tool. The other thing that we've seen come up in contracts is that these AI tools are generally provided on an as-is basis with no real warranties, other than that it's going to function in material respects with the documentation that they provide. And also, liability and indemnification, those are always big issues when we do contract negotiations. I think some of the agreements actually do require you to indemnify the AI vendor for the input that you put into the tools. So that's something to note as well. The last thing I just wanted to note was about the policies. So we've seen our clients implement a range of AI policies and procedures, from prohibiting the use of AI completely without prior written approval of, some of the department heads, or allowing the use of AI with specific parameters. Going back to the best practices we talked about on the inputs, at the very least, companies should have policies regulating how employees put in any confidential, sensitive, personal, or proprietary information. And, at the end of the day, it's not just about having these policies and procedures in place, but it's also having the administrative and organizational controls to implement and enforce them. One of the good ways of doing so is training. I know our firm, we have several different types of trainings on all the different AI tools that we have access to. So that's something that's also very helpful. And also I think another point is a lot of these AI tools do have administrative controls where you can permit certain individuals from the company to act sort of as a gatekeeper to either turn off or on the AI tool capabilities. So that's also something to keep in mind. You know, a lot of these best practices we've discussed are really just using common sense. And as lawyers, some of these best practices are actually requirements under our ethical obligations. So I wanted to also note that as well.
Yeah, let's talk a little about the ethics. You know, what Karen mentioned, and I think we did in this particular Lunch and Learn, is talk at a high level about, you know, some of the confidentiality and best practices and those things that are really common sense in terms of your use of artificial intelligence. But we would be remiss not to mention that as lawyers, we are required to do certain things under the rules of professional responsibility. And we need to understand what those things are as they relate to all of this new technology. And those responsibilities are really fundamental. They are have been around for a long time. We all know what they are. It's just good to be reminded occasionally that they apply to artificial intelligence just the same as the regular practice of law with, you know, the old, you know, quill, pen, and paper. And, you know, primary on those is confidentiality, as Karen said, and making sure that when you're doing your prompting, you're not inputting certain information that is either trade secret information or like the social security numbers, you know, a document that has information that is, you know, not publicly available, that's particular to a client, and you know it's going beyond, you know, the four corners of the company. And, you know, competence and diligence. Actually, all of us that are attending this webinar are fulfilling our Rule 1.1, rule of professional responsibility, and keeping up with developments. And that helps avoid user error, which is, you know, we're just going to try the artificial intelligence, but maybe we don't quite know yet because we haven't been trained exactly what it does and what it doesn't do. So competence is a responsibility. Preserving confidentiality, obviously, is a cornerstone of the practice of law. And then the duty to supervise in Rule 5.1. Part of that is the training that Karen mentioned. And just like you would review an associate's work and check citations, you should review the artificial intelligence tools work. And I know you've seen at the, you know, front pages of, you know, the LA Times, the Orange County Register, you know, the San Diego Press, the court fines and penalties for lawyers that have made up citations in briefs. As one of our speakers said, when you have the artificial intelligence spitting out these perfectly crafted professional summaries, it gives you perhaps a sense of confidence that they actually know and have the confidence in that statement. But it's our job as lawyers to make sure that the tool has been grounded in the right requirements, that it is up to date, and fact check what that tool is doing before we ever release it to the court or certainly to our clients. And finally, transparency. Transparency to the client. Are you using artificial intelligence in providing the work product? Transparency to the court. And in some situations, under the court rules, you are required to make those disclosures if you have used artificial intelligence in submitting any court documents. And many of the laws are also looking at ethics biases and making sure that you have a bias audit in using artificial intelligence. So, you know, that avoids discrimination in that use. So I know we only have a few minutes, and if we don't have the questions on the chat, but if anyone wants to raise a question, please put it in the chat. We wanted to, as we are winding up the presentation, talk about and hope that we provided useful information for you all to make better use of AI tools professionally and personally, and select the right tool for the right case. I love, Ashton, when you're talking about the intent, the context, and the instruction, which are those nice three things that I can remember when I'm using AI. And we have some lovely parting gifts for you all in terms of some of the resources. And if you'll look at the list that we'll display, and you'll get a copy of this, there are some articles that we wrote on the law, both in the EU and the United States. There's also some resources on prompt engineering and some training in terms of using various artificial intelligence tools that explain, what they're based on, what they're grounded in, how to get the best result from the use of the tools, et cetera. Additionally, we have a resource that we provide free to our clients every month, which is summarizing privacy, security, and artificial intelligence and what is happening in terms of the courts. As you know, the Big Beautiful Bill has a moratorium on state law, at least proposed, as part of trying to allow the federal government to come up with action plans on artificial intelligence and encourage innovation over regulation. We are closely following that, as well as the global context like the EU AI bill in terms of artificial intelligence. It looks like we're at time, and you'll see in the next slide that there's some of our contact information. If you have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to ask. I want to take a minute to thank our panel that is really, it's a delight to be in the same virtual room with them. They have so much knowledge. They've really been on the forefront of artificial intelligence and how it applies to the legal profession. And thank you as an audience for your attention and participation today. The CLA form will be emailed to you, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks for your attention.